Today I saw two new movies, Hellboy and The Missing Link. One was a entertaining, fun for the whole family adventure film, and the other was The Missing Link. That's all I got.
On an island off the coast of Scotland, something was summoned from the depths of hell. Something that would end mankind.
And this thing you worried about, did it show up?
Oh, yes. You did.
So Hellboy is directed by a man that I have respected before. His name is Neil Marshall, and that's not to say I don't respect him now. I still respect some of his work. I think Neil Marshall is a competent director that really seems to enjoy making movies, and one of my favorite movies from him is a really great, well not great, but really solid horror movie called The Descent. It's a really entertaining horror movie with some genuinely frightening sequences, great set design, some fluid camera movement, some good direction, some nice performances, a solid horror movie altogether. And when I saw him on board to direct this new Hellboy reboot, I got not excited at all, but I said, oh, that's an interesting choice. And to say that the backlash towards this movie was bad is an understatement. I think a lot of people really didn't want to see this movie happen, even with a competent director like Neil Marshall at the head of it, mainly because the original Hellboy, Hellboy and Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, were directed and starring, well, directed by Guillermo del Toro, starring Ron Perlman, and those movies are kind of cult classics at this point. A lot of people really love them. I think they're okay, but a lot of people love these movies, and Guillermo and Perlman both wanted to make a third one. They both expressed interest in making another movie and expanding on this series. And instead, we have this movie, a reboot of Hellboy.
Listen up, ladies and gentlemen. Out there's a 5th century sorceress who wants to bring down the curtain on London and the world.
Great. Homework.
There is so little I liked about this movie, it's actually hard for me to think of much. There's a few special effects that I liked. There was a couple sequences that were entertaining. The last scene of the movie is kind of fun, and what I wish the rest of this movie would have been, a small-scale B-movie with some fun action. That's what I wanted from this movie, and instead, it's this gigantic world-ending stakes movie that takes itself so seriously that it ends up shooting itself in the foot. This movie took itself so seriously, it was unbelievable. I can't fathom why the decision was made to make this movie serious. There are jokes in it, of course, but the jokes are so forced and unnatural.
Hey! I'm on your side!
That it may as well have just taken them out, because they don't serve any purpose. They all sucked, none of them were funny, and they all seem shoehorned in and are completely unnecessary. So even if you took those jokes out, this movie would still be a self-serious nightmare that makes no sense at all and is a complete disaster of a film. Not only is the humor dreadful, and not only does it take itself way too seriously, but this movie constantly is berating the audience, telling you that it's cool. It constantly wants to be the cool movie of the summer. It constantly wants people walking out of the theater and saying, "Dang, that guy got ripped in half. How cool was that? Yeah, he got really close to the camera and then he got torn in half. That was so awesome." And then there was rock music playing while he got torn in half. That's just the coolest thing. But it isn't. But this is something I really want to drive home. This movie wants so badly to be cool that it goes to extraordinary lengths to try and be cool. It constantly has just completely unnecessary and ineffective shock gore scenes, like I said, people getting torn in half, or a guy getting impaled on some skeleton's leg, or some guy getting his head torn off, or things like that. But there is nothing about it that is effective. It's just gore for the sake of gore. And there is a nauseating amount of it in this movie, and yet None of it is shocking, none of it is gross, none of it is entertaining or fun or funny at all. It's all just gore for the sake of it because it thinks that's what it needs to do to be cool. And not only is it constantly gory just for the sake of being gory, but they're constantly swearing and saying slurs and all this kind of horrible stuff, and it feels so forced. There's nothing edgy about swearing. There's nothing funny about the punchline being a swear word. So why do they feel necessary to shoehorn in all of these F-bombs? It's completely unnecessary. I don't care if a little demon is saying F you and putting up his middle fingers. That's not funny. That's just edgy for the sake of being edgy. It's so unnecessary.
Why do you fight for those who hate and fear you? You were meant for this. Out of the ashes, new Eden will emerge.
Okay, I'd appreciate a prophecy with more relatable stakes.
And not only is this movie desperate for recognition, but it is just completely mishandled. I can't believe Neil Marshall, a director that's made some legitimately good movies, has completely mishandled this movie. Everything from the editing to the way it's shot to the visual effects is absolutely horrendous. There are hard cut comedy cuts in this movie that cut to things that aren't funny. Like it'll hard cut from someone saying something, and then you think the punchline is the hard cut to whatever it's going to cut to, but then it will cut to like a train going down a track, and that's not a joke, so I don't know why it was a hard cut like that. Or it'll cut in the middle of an action scene to something else for no reason. It constantly is just editing so much that it gave me a headache. There are so many scenes that are edited so frantically that it's impossible to see what's happening, and it is actually nauseating. It's more nauseating than the blood and gore in this movie, if you can believe that. And the writing, the writing is so bad. The dialogue, like I expressed earlier with the constant swearing, is so terrible. There's a lot of English people in this movie, but they aren't just English. They have to be the stereotypical English people that say things like bugger off, you prick, or bollocks, things like that. I haven't really met too many English people, but this just seems like a completely over-the-top stereotype of English people that is just not that funny. I don't understand it. Why can't English people just talk like normal human beings? Why are only the Americans the ones that talk like normal people? What? Performances too just aren't that great. David Harbour as Hellboy is mumbling through most of the movie and you can't really understand him. Sacha Lane is an over-the-top British stereotype, and the performances in general across the board are not given anything to work with, so they just come off really terrible and forced, just like everything else. But a lot of this movie honestly could be saved if it didn't take itself so seriously, if it was self-aware, if it was campy, if it knew what it was. But it just doesn't. This movie absolutely has no idea what it wants to be. It doesn't know if it's a comedy because frequently it's not telling jokes or doing anything funny, and it's not a drama because nothing about this movie is dramatic or affecting or emotional at all. It's just a complete tone-deaf nightmare of a movie that is scrambled together to try and appease as many people as possible to try and make a franchise around. And yet, everyone hates it. Why? Because it's so blatant. Everything about this is just blatant and desperate. I can't believe this is a real movie. I just can't believe it. I won't ever watch this again, but currently I'll give it a 2 out of 10. Maybe if I ever decide to, it will go down. I was struggling between whether I wanted to give it a 1 or a 2, but because I like Neil Marshall, because there are some good special effects, and because there's a couple good scenes in this, I'll give it a 2 for now. But just don't see it. Go see The Missing Link. The Missing Link is really fun, and not just for kids. This is a really entertaining adventure movie that is just a joy to watch. Go watch The Missing Link. Ignore this piece of trash and go watch a kids movie, because it's so much better than this. I can't believe I'm saying that. Goodbye.